going to add some of these reflections. Again, a little bit of the eyelash stroke. Didn't want that. There. Just kind of a randomness, but a controlled randomness. Does that make sense? This is something you can just have fun with. There's no right or wrong. No one will ever be sitting in exactly the same position at exactly this time of day. So you can go however you want to. It's up against this other building, so I'm going to smooth out the edges a little bit. And again, sometimes when I'm smoothing out edges, it's easier to do a horizontal line sometimes than it is to a vertical line. So I'm going to turn my board so I can do it horizontally. Now that might not work for you, but it tends to work for me. It took me a long time painting before I realized I can move the board. I'm in charge. I can do what I want to do. There, I like that one too. And you can see the differences in the color. This one on a side away from the sun needs to be a lot bluer and darker than this one that's facing into the sun. We're going to add a couple more dark spaces. There's a lot of shadow here, so there's a lot of darkness falling over this building. I'm going to add that. And the nice thing is I can use a flat brush. This is a small flat brush. This is, I think, 1/4 of an inch. Yes, 1/4 of an inch. And so I'm going to use the flat brush to add this dark in here. Again, it's an edge that's facing away from the sun, so I'm going to use the same color. It'll make it harmonious in the painting. And again, since for stripes I like to go horizontally, I'm turning my paper horizontally. And it comes to an angle at the top here, so I'm going to angle it. That's the nice thing about a flat brush too. You can get a beautiful flat edge without too much fuss. I'm actually going to turn it now the other way to do the top of this edge. Sometimes you have to be careful so you don't get on your wet paint, so I'm going to put this here to brace my arm. I do have, not with me, but I do have a mahl stick, which M-A-H-L, which is kind of like this, but it also supports your arm so you don't get on your painting. And they can be handy, but you do need to be careful because sometimes you'll drag them through your paint and make a bigger mess than if you would have just used your own good sense. And I think this is a dark area too, so we'll go ahead and do this dark area. I'm actually going to leave a tiny bit of an edge right at the edge of the building. I think it'll add to the illusion that the building, this is one face and this is another face. This facade is a little bit more towards the sun. I'm going to make it a little bit wetter and less intense than this side. The top of this building is also dark, so I'm going to do my darks now. I'm going to finish off this dark of the building. And again, I'm going to leave a little bit of a crack at the edge of the building. I think that'll just add to the eye being able to figure out where the building turns. And then this building has these really beautiful stripes of dark. So I'm just going to paint those in right now. Took a little jog there. To cover up my little jog I took, I'm just going to make it a little bit thicker. Painting with a color this dark, I wouldn't be able to lift it out. And no one's going to care if this line's a little thicker than the other one. If you don't tell them. So make sure you don't tell anybody that one line's a little bit thicker. Okay. I think I'm looking at my notes. Dark. This is a dark top too. Let me do this dark top. See, isn't it great having these notes? Because it's really hard to remember all these different shapes when you're intimately involved in putting the paint on. And because my sky is dry, now I can go right up to the sky. And again, you can see a flat brush can make very nice straight lines, and it can handle these kind of intricate corners that I'm needing to add here. You can do it with a round brush too. Sometimes it just depends on the brush that I have in my hand, but a flat brush is my choice for something like this. Okay, and then let's see if I had any other dark places marked. I think I'm good. I think we'll let these dark, actually I see this is coming a little bit too light. It's a little stripy. I'm going to add more color to this. I don't like that stripiness to it. Doing a watercolor painting, you have a lot of balls in the air. You really need to worry about the area that you're painting and the area that you're waiting to dry, and again, all the weather and other issues you're working with. I think that's better. The edges are a little light, but I think they'll blend in once we get the other buildings in. Great. A little bit more here. Okay, I think I'm going to let this dry and then come back in a few minutes. We've waited for some things to dry, and now we can get on back to our painting. What I'm going to start with now is putting on some of the details on this building in the front. And I've mixed up a gray, which is a complement of different colors, and I like my grays to be lively, so I tend to mix them. I don't have a Payne's gray as one of the paints that I keep on my palette. I think most watercolors do have a gray or a neutral tint or something like that, and it's just, I just prefer to mix my grays. So this dark gray, and I'll show you, is really mixed from a little bit of purple, a little bit of green, a little bit of brown, and that's how I get my grays. And I think that's about the color I want. A little bit more brown, I think, so it's a little bit, there we go. That should do it. Now a little teeny bit more purple. There we go. Nice. Okay, so we're going to go along the edge of the building. There's a very interesting rounded effect on the edge of this building, and so I'm going to add this right here, and it goes on the side of these little parapets or whatever they are, and then because of the perspective you don't see them on that side of the angle, so we're just seeing them on these sides. So we'll just continue along, and then as we come along here, our perspective, it'll change a little bit. We will see it. I think I'm going to turn my board this way. All these things will add to the illusion of depth in the painting, and since these are buildings, that's pretty important. Now this side is a little bit different. I guess I'll call it the railing, the edging, seems to go straight across, and then those things come out of it. So we'll put the edging straight across, and then these things, the part that goes towards the back slants against the roof. And again, this will add to the perspective of this building. You see I'm slanting this, so it gives the illusion that these things are actually sitting against the roof. This one's so little you're not going to notice that. Then there's two little hitches in the building, kind of odd, but that's what makes building so wonderful, because you never know quite what they're going to do. So this building takes a little jog here, and I'm using a round brush, but it's a pretty nice round brush, so it can hold a lot of paint. It's frustrating to be using a brush and to try to paint a line like this and to run out of paint before you get to the end of the line. So it's nice to have a good quality brush that will hold a lot of paint. I use natural and synthetic brushes. And, oh, this one is, I guess I'll just call it really grubby looking. It's not as, even this is modeled, but this is like really, maybe there was another building up against it or something. So I'm going to water down this gray, and I will paint it here, and I might take a Q-tip, or I might take a paper towel and dab it so that it's very mottled in this dark gray color. I don't want it to look even. I think a Q-tip might work in this particular case. Not so much. I'm going to use a paper towel. There we go. There we are. That's better. Do you see how it made it really uneven? That's the look I wanted. Now I might tip in a little bit more paint here and there. It's a little bit wet, so it's going to kind of run and move. That'll be perfect. Great. That's what I want. Okay, now the next thing is we're going to paint this roof. And I want a little bit lighter color than what I've been using on these details. Again, I'm taking a round brush and just following my drawing lines. The roof is, I want it to exist. I want us to be able to tell that this is truly a three-dimensional building, but I don't want it to stand out too much. So this is a very neutral gray. Again, this gray has been created by using a purple, a green, and a brown, and that's how I make my grays. I love these neutral colors like this ochre sand color. It reminds me of colors that have been used in watercolor since the beginning of time, since the beginning of, I think, the beginning of mankind. The caves in Spain and France that have the cave paintings on them, they're from about 15,000 to 20,000 years ago. And in those paintings, in those caves, they use the same pigments, the ochres, the siennas, they use these same pigments, the mineral pigments that we use today. What that makes me feel is a real sense of connectedness to these ancient artists. So I feel my hereditary line in terms of art influences goes back at least 15, 20,000 years. It makes me feel very connected to these watercolor artists. Okay, we are making progress. This line's a little uneven. I'm going to fill it in a little bit more. I'm going to let this dry. As you can see, the roof, pretty simple. There's some details on here that I want to add. I'm going to beef up my gray a little bit. This building is very, on this one side of it, it's quite a lot of city grime on this one side of this building. So I'm going to try to give those illusions by getting a gray that, like I said, is a little beefed up. It's also this round turret, so I'm going to give the illusion of this roundness by putting some of the kind of circular aspects in. Do you see, just by adding a couple of little circular things, it's all of a sudden beginning to look round. And I don't know what all these details are, but I'm just going to put a couple of details in there. Then these are almost like archways and columns. That one's a little crooked. columns, more kind of archways. I think I'm just going to add another round shape. I'm going to extend it a little outside so we can tell that it goes past the outside of the building. Some windows, one window, two window, one window, two window. To add the windows in this building, I'm going to use a flat brush because it'll make it pretty simple. And again, I'm going to beef up my gray. I'm going to add quite a bit more purple, having a reflection. So I'm going to move my palette so I can see it a little bit better. Okay, I'll show you on my paper. That's almost a black. Do you see? That's a really pretty color. Again, it's a lively color because I haven't just taken a too black. I've taken and mixed it, so there's a lot of depth to this color. Perfect. So I can see where I've marked in my pencil lines, and now I can come back and it doesn't have to be even, and you can leave some bits and pieces. Who knows what might be hanging out of a window, or where there might be a reflection or something like that. The nice thing about these old buildings too is that they're not always predictable. So not all the windows are the same height, they're the same spacing. So it's kind of fun. You can use some imagination. It's a little bit more difficult to see my windows here, so I'm just going to concentrate. Then I like the unevenness of kind of some things that are unexpected. So I'm just going to skip a couple of windows that are actually in that building. These windows look a little bit too pristine and even for me. So I think I'm going to take my paper towel and just, now I need to turn it each time so I'm not depositing paint. I just want to take off a little paint. Do you see that makes each window a little bit different? These are too dry. That's okay. They're on the side. Okay, this one too, maybe. Oh, I like that better. Now I tend to sit sideways, so my windows tend to get kind of slanted. So now I'm going to come back and think, okay, how do I have to square these up so they look like they're square and not my funny angle? And I'm trying to make the corners a little bit more legit too. It's a matter of painting, adjusting, coming back, painting, adjusting, all that kind of stuff. Okay, we have some more of these dark windows over here. And along this edge, which goes back a different direction, and actually, I see now that these that I thought were windows are actually vents. So I'm gonna, this is a watercolor crayon, and I'm gonna add some diagonal lines in these and see if that's gonna help them look more like vents. I think it does. I think that's gonna be enough on those that they're gonna look very vent-like rather than window-like. Okay, if I felt it needed more, and I might come back with a white crayon too in a little bit. But for now, that's what I'm gonna leave it as.
Join us on this station for new episodes. Watercolor with Jane M. Mason from Watching Paint Dry, LLC. Thank you for watching.